It's all in shambles! Rarity howled, teetering backwards as she rested a dainty hoof over her unkempt bangs. My career! My artistic endeavors from here to Manhattan! All burnt to ashes! Will you stop getting your mane in a twirl? Applejack frowned from where she stood with Rarity outside of Sugar Cube Corner in the sunset. Your business sure as heck ain't ruined. No worse than any pony else's in town. She smiled awkwardly, patting a hoof on Rarity's shoulder to console her. This crazy spell's been affecting equines of all walks of life, and I reckon they'll all forgive each other in the end, on account of every pony's reputation being taken to the woodshed. So quit your whining about the boutique and help me find Twilight already. I've looked everywhere, even at the library. I got to find her. You call this nothing? Rarity pointed at the 311 over her head as she gripped Applejack's shoulder and slumped forward with bug eyes. This is not the lie counter, it's a bullseye, and Mistress Fate is frowning upon me. Now I have no choice but to habitually spit out the truth. It's the only way I can make penance, Applejack. Do you not see? That's quite interesting, Rarity. My favorite color is mauve, Rarity hissed, her eyes twitching as she hung more and more limply from Applejack's chest. I once wore plaid to a dinner party. Chalkboards make me cringe. I have a disgustingly insatiable appetite for vanilla wafers. She shook Applejack's neck and sobbed outright. I made sissy in my bed until the age of 5. Applejack shook her head free of Rarity's embrace and patted the caterwauling unicorn's mane. Now, there. I reckon we all had experiences with, drinking too much milk right before... She looked up and brightened. Twilight! Rarity sniffled, then glanced up with a decidedly deadpan face out of nowhere. No, that doesn't quite make much sense. Twilight, you're here! Applejack beamed, lowering her hat at the sight of the gently smiling unicorn. With a nervous twitch, she pulled Rarity up to her hooves and pointed her towards the front entrance of Sugar Cube Corner. Why don't you give us a few minutes, Rare? Go inside and, have yourself some of them hoof-licking good vanilla wafers you take such a liking to. Vanilla wafers won't salvage my crashing and burning career, Rarity cooed, as she nevertheless limped inside the colorful eatery. But they'll help. Once she was gone, Applejack sighed and trotted over towards Twilight. Twilight, Sugar Cube, I don't know what to say. She gulped as the number 4 hovered shamefully above her head. I feel plumb awful about what happened this morning, and I was hoping that I might have a chance to explain why I lied and... Applejack, it's all right, Twilight said softly, her face the very definition of calm. You didn't lie. The freckled mare blinked. I beg your pardon? And even if you did, it doesn't matter to me, Twilight said, her voice wavering a bit. Not anymore. I'm a mite bit confused. Applejack plopped her hat back on and squinted. You mean to say that you no longer care if I lied to you or not? Twilight paced across the sunset's glow to stand closer to her friend. I did some studies on the cause of this spell. You do know the cause of it, yes? Something or other about a wand of Wally? Wand of Walling. Right, that. Applejack cleared her throat. What about it? I didn't realize for the longest time that the true nature of the spell was eluding me, and yet it was staring at me the whole time, Twilight said. At least in the name. She swiveled and faced Applejack directly, her eyes as soft as her next few words. The Wand of Walling is a rough translation from the Trudian tongue into modern equestrian language. As it turns out, it isn't strictly about establishing barriers of deception between ponies. Then what do you reckon it's about? Twilight breathed evenly and said, It's about filling facades. Period. She gestured as she explained. It's about pretending to be feeling one way when you're actually feeling another. That doesn't always have to involve outright lying to another pony, though that's a part of it. The truth is, you can be doing your best to protect another pony's interest, and still it counts as building a wall. Be it a wall constructed with one's composure, one's strength, and even one's courage. I don't think I read you correctly, Twi, Applejack said. And a lie's a lie, ain't it? Oh, Applejack. Twilight smiled at her, her cheeks rosy. Moisture clung to the edges of her lashes as she summoned the courage to confess. I let myself get so upset this morning because I made myself think that the one thing you're good at is being honest and nothing else. But life is too complex, and so are you, though you might think of yourself as simpler. The fact is, there's more of you than telling the truth, Applejack. She sniffed and bore a brave smile. Besides, how would I be able to rely on your better qualities if I relied exclusively on your honesty all the time? Applejack squinted sideways at her. And them qualities are... strength and faithfulness. Twilight took a deep breath, then whispered her words succinctly. Without both of which, Celestia knows where I'd be today. She leaned her head to the side. Now, did you wish to tell me something about this morning? Applejack blinked. Slowly, she smiled a soft smile, and said, Simply that, when you visited me at Sweet Apple Acres this morning, and I told you that I always had time for you, she gulped. The fact of the matter is, Twilight stared at her. Her lips quivered, but she remained quiet, patient. Applejack sighed and nervously adjusted the brim of her hat. I did have time for you, but I didn't rightly plan on sharing it with any pony, even if I could. You see, Twilight, there's a reason for why I've done such an early apple harvest, and it's for a reason that I didn't even mention in a letter we sent to Celestia just recently. So there's another case of me fibbing like a snake in the grass. To the princess, no less. Shh. Twilight leaned forward, her eyes warm and earnest. Go on. This time of the year, this week in particular, is the anniversary of my folks' passing. And don't get me wrong, I ain't grieving or nothing. I mean, sure, I get pretty misty-eyed this time of year and such, but I'm well beyond the days of bawling my eyes out like a little filly. It just so happens that I have a tradition that I stick to every year. Twilight nodded. You wish to get the farm operating in perfect fashion to honor their memory. To make them proud, Applejack said. And as much as I can afford to spend the time with my closest friends, with ponies I love and respect, ponies like you, Twilight, I guess she seethed, wincing as if in labor. Eventually, she let it out. I don't particularly enjoy breaking my attention away from the task of getting the apples harvested, this week of all weeks. And I understand that, Applejack, Twilight said in a soft tone. She wore a smile to match it. What you do every year, it makes sense now. I think it's a very noble thing, but 'tain't your problem to deal with, Applejack said with a frown. She sighed and stared down at her hooves. What I mean is, y'all shouldn't have to worry about me none. I'm an adult now, and I can deal with everything that comes with this time of year. I want to be there for you, and the rest of the girls, but... She grumbled. Gosh darn it. I reckon a part of me doesn't feel up to it from time to time. I wish I could say that I'm 100% strong every second of the day, Twi. But... Applejack. Twilight trotted over and placed a loving hoof on Applejack's shoulder. Her voice wavered in a sympathetic tone. You don't have to put up walls around yourself just for our benefit. Yes, I do, Twilight. Applejack gazed up, her lips quivering. Moisture clung to the edges of her green eyes, a very rare sight for Twilight. 'Cause I don't rightly know how to handle things any other way. I can look after myself. You ponies shouldn't have to bother about me. But what if we want to? Twilight asked. We're friends, and we care. She gulped. Enough to to feel angry and confused for all the wrong reasons when we spotted a crack in your armor. She hung her face as a tear finally ran down her cheek. And I'm sorry for that, Applejack. Her shoulders began to shake. I'm so sorry for the way I treated you this morning. Applejack bore a strong, warm smile. She caressed Twilight's cheek until it was dry. I reckon we should be mostly sorry for the way we treat ourselves from time to time. Twilight chuckled dryly, her voice still shaking a bit, and then she said, Yeah, well, I've been treating myself like a saint all this time, and... She choked down a sob. It doesn't feel right. It feels... lonely. And I used to feel lonely all the time, Applejack. It's a very dark place, and I only received the light from one source. She clenched her jaw and steadied her lungs, speaking in a far firmer tone. Now I'm older, Applejack, and I have to light my own path, as well as the paths for those around me. And I'm thankful to you and Cheerily and other ponies who are making me look twice so that I can stumble less. I'd help if there were less walls in the way, of course, although I'm starting to understand what some of those walls mean. Yes, I reckon. Applejack nodded and smiled. And I also reckon it's a tad bit lonely being the only pony in town sporting a halo. Both mares laughed cheerfully, and as the melting sunset bathed them both, they shared a friendly embrace, for everything had crumbled between them. Twilight Sparkle was sitting on the balcony to her treehouse that night, waiting patiently when the first hint of a glowing light came. She stood from her half-read books and glanced up, squinting into the slowly coalescing orb of luminescence. With regal grace, the orb solidified in the form of Princess Celestia. The Alicorn Princess touched down to the balcony on gold-plated hooves, having finished her transportation spell. At long last, after 3 long days of delay, she had arrived in the magically afflicted town to lend her aid. Twilight, Celestia breathed, and her placid voice carried the tiniest bit of surprise in its exhalation. You are awake, I see. Twilight nodded, her glowing 0 bobbing with the motion of her head. I have been having trouble sleeping as of late, Your Highness. I trust that you have had your hooves full while I was busy tending to matters in Baltimore. Twilight tried to smile, but her lips broke in a nervous twitch. Yes, many ponies were hoping that I might somehow have a cure to the ancient Tritian spell that I wrote to you about. But, well, things did not escalate too chaotically, I hope? No, Your Majesty. Twilight softly shook her head. Though, if you suspect that they would, I imagine that you would have arrived here sooner. Yes, Twilight, Celestia said softly, her voice navigating the silent cloud hanging between them. Above her shimmering visage, a glowing number hovered, and it was well into the triple digits. I would, and could have arrived sooner. Twilight simply gazed at her. Twilight, my good and faithful student, Celestia spoke dryly, trying to compose herself with an immaculate smile, but even that seemed as jaded as the magenta luster in her eyes. I trust that you might have many questions. Anticipating them, as well as your potential shock, was part of the reason for why I delayed my arrival for so long. I did not mention this in my response to your letter, but this is not the first occasion of the Tritian spell having graced modern Equestria. 400 years ago, something like this happened, in much the same way, and I had to explain things to my apprentice at the time. Needless to say, the exchange that followed shortly after my dispersal of the spell was not exactly fortuitous to our ongoing studies, and... Silence reigned. Celestia finally uttered, I want you to know, Twilight, that I have always wanted the best for you. I wanted you to live a life of absolute integrity, a life that I could only illustrate for you, as I have no legitimate example to present, for I am far too encumbered in the task of assuring the greater good of this kingdom and—" Celestia's speech came to an end before the princess even began to fumble for words. A warm, lavender body had crossed the distance between them and was nuzzling her like a foal would greet its mother. "Twilight," Celestia stammered. "Do not worry, princess," Twilight said, tears trickling down her smiling face. "I understand, and though it may not be everything that I understand, I want you to know that it's all okay." She gulped. "You're the light of my life, and I love you too much to feel any differently." Celestia rode the crest of a heavy breath, and her eyes finally sparkled once more as she reached a wing around to hold the little pony close to her. "My dearest Twilight," she whispered and leaned her head down with her eyes shut to nuzzle her. "I am so very proud of you." She smiled. "Now and forever." Twilight cracked a smile, though she weathered it with a sniffle or two. The princess and her apprentice hovered there for a long period of time. There was no royalty and no mentorship, just two hearts sharing in lucid, honest warmth. They had reunited, as if iron bastions had been lifted for the first time in ages. The stars serenaded the moment so that they almost forgot that there was a curse to fix in the first place. "Bon Bon, just hear me out." Lyra reached across the eating table and caressed the earth pony's forelimbs. Hours ago, all of the magical numbers had at last vanished from the air, allowing the full afternoon light to twinkle in their journeyed eyesight. "The fact that you've been sneaking bits of food that's dangerous to your blood sugar doesn't bother me. I understand temptations, and I know that, in spite of your weaknesses, you are improving." She smiled softly, attempting to wipe the sad, worried expression on her beloved's face. "And the fact that you lied to me, on several occasions, isn't the heart of the issue either." Bon Bon shivered slightly, chewing nervously on her lip. Lyra leaned forward and spoke in a low tone. "What bothers me is that you thought you had... that you had to deceive me to make me happy. After all, we've been working so hard on this special diet of yours. Together. Would I have been mad at you if you just confessed your secret trips to Sugar Cube Corner? Yeah, sure. I would have been mad. But there's a reason for why I get angry at you, Bon Bon." She smiled, her amber eyes glossy. "It's because I'm deeply in love with you. And I want what's best for you, what's best for us. And when you resort to lies, well, it hurts me, Bon Bon. Because I feel as if it sets our relationship 2 steps back with each bit of false pretense. And I hate the idea of being distant from you, Bon Bon." She sniffed. I don't want to be alone again, like I used to be. You brought too much sunshine into my life for me to go back to that." "Oh, Lyra." Bon Bon choked back a sob and clasped Lyra's hoof with her own. "If I'd known that it meant that much to you." "That's why I'm telling you now." Lyra wiped her cheek dry and smiled painfully at her mare friend. "Because I want you to know. I need you to know. I don't want any stupid barriers between us, Bon Bon. Even when you're doing stupid things, I'd rather I just know. Because I'm willing to forgive you, Bon Bon. And I hope you're just as willing to forgive me when I do even stupider things, like telling you to shut up only because I'm angry." "Of course I'm willing," Bon Bon whispered, caressing Lyra's cheek. She scooted around the table until she was close to the unicorn, squatting beside her seat. "I love you, Lyra. And can we just... oh, I don't know. leave this behind and start over? Lyra cracked a bittersweet smile. Why start over? Let's just continue from where we are now, she shuddered. 'Cause now feels good. Bon Bon smiled, her eyes tearing. I agree, wholeheartedly. She pecked Lyra on the cheek and nuzzled her dearly. Lyra leaned against her, shutting her eyes and breathing in peace. All of this Twilight couldn't help but observe as she trotted past the restaurant. She smiled to herself and hummed a tune as she carried a saddlebag full of market-brought things across town and to the front door of the library treehouse. Stepping inside, she was greeted by Spike, who was carrying a miniature broom and dustpan. Twilight squinted suspiciously. What are you up to now, I wonder? Just cleaning the place up like you asked me to, he fitfully exclaimed with a nervous smile. Honest! Keep saying that and you'll wear it out, Twilight muttered, hanging her bag up onto a rack. Spike sighed, his body sagging as his eyes fell to the library's wooden floorboards. I know. With a clanking noise, a sparkling new garden shovel landed at his feet. He did a double take, glancing up at Twilight. What's this? It's a lot easier for you to carry around than a large shovel built for an adult pony, don't you think? Twilight uttered in a sing-songy voice. Well, yeah, but... Spike cradled the thing in his claws and stammered. Did you seriously just go out and buy this for me? Twilight giggled lightly. You've still got gems to dig up for baking your special dragon cupcakes, right? Yes, but... Spike bit his lip and rocked back and forth, nervously. After all that's happened as of late... Spike, come here. Twilight knelt down and scooped him into a surprise hug. She nuzzled him closely. We may both do things to annoy each other from time to time, maybe even hurt each other's feelings. But look at me. He did so, emerald eyes sparkling. She caressed his green spines as she said, It doesn't matter in the long run. I love you, and I trust you. Do I like you lying to me? No. But I like the idea of us drifting apart even less. So let's work on it together, shall we? She smiled as she squeezed his shoulder. You try fibbing less, and I'll try not to get so hung up on the small stuff. Deal? Spike tried to carry a strong breath, but it was betrayed by the wateriness in his eyes. Deal, he nodded. Now none of that. She brushed the edges of her eyes dry and stood up. You have some gem digging to get to. But, he squirmed, glancing from the fresh shovel in his claws to the dusty lengths of the room. You don't want me cleaning up after all? Go out and dig, Spike, before I change my mind, she grumbled. He squinted at her with a suspicious smirk. You still haven't slept much. Promise me you'll get some sleep. I'll get to this place eventually. Spike, there's nothing I'd rather do right now than hit the sack, Twilight said, stifling a yawn for emphasis. I know that I like having this place all spick and span for when Ponyvillians show up to check out books, but I kind of value my sanity all the more. Well, good then, Spike beamed. You go get some much-needed sleep, and I'll go dig up some gems. She called after him as he waddled briskly out of the building. Just be sure that you don't accidentally uncover any more insidious buried wands of ancient magic! The door closed behind him. She stared at the entrance, taking a deep breath, smiling warmly to herself. After a few moments, she turned around and trotted, albeit not to the stairs leading up to her bedroom. Instead, she opened the rest of her saddlebag's contents, pulling out a brand new feather duster, bottles of cleanser and disinfectant, and a bundle of fresh rags. She proceeded then to clean the room of dust and grime, returning the library to its usual shine before the incident with the floating numbers brought everything to a grinding halt. About 20 minutes into the clandestine act, she paused to levitate a pad of paper into a wooden drawer of a table located in the far corner of the library. On the topmost sheet, she inscribed her name, then drew a single hash mark above it, the first of many. "Living with walls is fine from time to time," Twilight Sparkle said, with a meditative smile, sliding the drawer shut and returning to her cleaning. "So long as we mind the gates." I now have hours of sitting here in silent thought ahead of me. This was The Numbers Don't Lie by Short Skirts and Explosions. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.